What gets you really anxious? Is it something about work, something about family, a combination? There are so many different things that stress us out, and today we're going to be talking about one psalm that helps address some of that, Psalm 127. So I'm here with my new friend, Rebecca, who is a professor of Hebrew and Old Testament at Truett Seminary, and we're so glad to have you here.
It's good to be here.
So, Rebecca, Psalm 127 is the psalm that has in it, "It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil." How does this psalm help us think about anxiety?
Yeah, I think a lot of what this psalm is doing is sort of going through the things that it's easy to get anxious about. And so it's, you're building your house, you're guarding your city, you're trying to stave off, destruction and disaster. It's, you're working really hard so that your family can eat. You're having enough children so that you can carry on your family line, all those things that at least in the ancient world, they would have been very anxious about, and some of which translate more than others these days. And it's going through all of those different things and saying, okay, not that worrying about these things a little bit and working at them is a bad thing, but if it becomes your driving emotion when you are working, when you're engaging with your family, when you are, doing whatever you have to do to stay alive, that's a problem because everything ultimately comes from God. So it's all this language of if, unless it's God, unless it's God, if it's not God, then it's a problem.
I also, the psalm starts, the first verse is, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain." And just thinking about how hard we work to be in control and stave off anxiety. But that this is the starting point of, unless God is in it, it's not going to work. And if God is doing it, it will work. And that kind of takes the pressure off of ourselves a little bit, but it's really hard to do.
It's in some ways it takes the pressure off because it doesn't all depend upon you. You don't have to, God's got it.
And it's also so hard to let that be
the because it can also be stressful because then you're not in control. I think we like to be able to, if you're in control, you can make sure that the dishes get done the way that you want them to get done, that spreadsheet gets done the way you want it to, that you're, whatever, all those things.
But when it's God, you have to just let it. It's like when you're doing a group project. It was a lot easier to I was always the kid that was like, I'll just do all the work because then I know it will be good enough. And if I trust someone else to do it, they might not come through the way that I'm hoping they will. And that's kind of our spiritual life.
What's interesting? It just made me think this idea of if I do this, then this will happen. That's the idea behind what magic is. And that's actually the related, this word that gets repeated, in vain, in vain, in vain. If we're doing things without God, without depending on God, it's in vain. That word in Hebrew is actually related to these magic kind of words.
And
so it is that idea of, we can't control so much in life. And that can be scary, but it's also a tremendous gift.
And what I liked, at first when I was looking at this psalm, I thought, we're just going to talk about the first couple verses because those are really the anxious verses, and then randomly the 3, 4, 5 verse, they're just about family, and we're just not going to talk about that. But then when I was looking at it more, I thought this is actually addressing the two main sources of anxiety, which is, I think, for all of us, work and family, in whatever mode that might be. So it might not be having your own children, but you're always in a family system. And so many people too think of their friends as family, so what is going on with your family dynamic within your friendships? And then whatever work you're doing, that's another source of anxiety.
It's whatever the work, the house building, and the children, family building, those are both just shorthand for whatever it is that gives you security and makes you happy.
Right. And you were telling me in the ancient world, especially, like children were a source of insurance, right?
Yeah,
Like
it was your life insurance.
Yeah, you have kids so that there's going to be someone to take care of you.
Yeah, and you know it's you're farming and you've got sheep or whatever you've got, and you need to have your kids, your
Right.
sons, to go out like King David did in
Yeah.
his youth and keep the sheep and
Right.
work the fields. And
So family in that it's life insurance, it's also ensuring that you have enough employees.
Right.
And that you have protection because
Yes.
they're going to take care of
Yes,
you. So there are all of those layers to family. So again, other sources of anxiety.
yes,
And you were telling me also a kind of funny, bittersweet story about this psalm being part of the nursery in your home.
yes, this psalm, specifically the end of verse 2 and the beginning of verse 3, are on my nursery wall framed because so I have two kids. One is 5 and one is almost 2. After the first one, I had significant postpartum depression. It was very difficult, lots of anxiety in all kinds of ways, all kinds of emotions, actually. But I remember reading through these Psalms. I mean, I'm a Psalms scholar, that's what I do. But I remember reading through them at one point, and I was reading this one, and as you go along, and I'm, very little sleep.
Yes.
There's screaming babies, very little sleep. And so I'm reading along, and it says, God gives sleep to those he loves. And then the very next verse is, children are a blessing from the Lord. And I laughed out loud because that was not my experience at this
Right.
time. So talking about sources of anxiety, the screaming baby that would not sleep.
Which kept you from sleeping.
Kept me from sleeping, kept me very anxious.
Yeah.
And it was this reminder, it was humorous. I
Yes.
literally laughed out loud. But it was also just zooming out, a reminder that the gifts of God, the provision of God, the presence of God can look really different than what we expect sometimes. And so, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Well, the house can look a lot of different ways. And, there's blessing in that, but there's also a lot of call to trust there.
Yeah. And that's actually the work that we are called to do as Christians is stepping into that place of trust, which is so hard.
Yeah.
And I think with work, you can trick yourself into thinking that if you work hard enough, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
And something about family life is that it's so much more obvious to me in family life that you're not in control because there are other people, and especially with children, we were talking about, you could do a really thorough Bible study. You could teach your kid Hebrew.
I could teach my kid Hebrew.
And they might not grow up to be okay. They might not want to be a Christian growing up. All sorts of things might happen, and you're just not in control, and that makes us really anxious.
It makes us anxious. And the promise of the psalm, though, right, is that these people are the people that trust God with this, that take their anxiety, their cares, and cast them upon the Lord. They are happy. They can be at peace. They can be at rest. Not because everything works out the way that they think it does, but because they are relying on God ultimately to give the gifts. It makes me think about in 1 Corinthians 3, where it's talking about all the fighting in the church. So they're anxious about who's the best pastor and who's doing the best Bible study and all these different things, and who's the most important. And there's this really great line where it's, some plant and some water. The work itself is not bad, but it's God that gives the growth.
Yes. And these different stages, you might not be able to see the growth happen, right? We talk about this all the time just in the Christian life. You might work really hard to share the love of God with someone, and 50 years later they're going to remember some of that and God will use that, but it will be after your interaction with them has long faded. And so that can be really hard for us to accept that, but that's also part of trusting that God's going to grow what needs to be grown. And like you said, the house is going to look different than we thought.
The house might look different, but God will build it.
So I think that kind of brings us to our kind of benediction that we had talked about, wanting to just leave people with what is this psalm gifting us in the face of our anxiety, and it's that it doesn't all depend on you.
Yeah.
And I think that there's actually, I was just talking about this in therapy this week. There's a gift in saying, there's a freedom in saying, I'm not in control, because it's actually true, even when you try.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to do it all.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you go into your week, this is the gift that Rebecca and I and Psalm 127 want to give you, is it doesn't all depend on you. And we just pray that that might be a source of peace in your anxiety. Have a good week.